Welcome to Myth-Informed with your hosts, Brian and Dimitri. Typically, we interview guests. Today, I wanted to start with a video, but we can't do that.
Well, you know, we want to start specifically with a video because at Mythcon, we did have a couple people that couldn't make it. Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay were among two that had to drop out, and they have a video that they would like you to hear.
Oh, yes, they do indeed. Hit it.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, we got crackling. Well,
all right. So the video intersectionality panel. We then changed that because they couldn't make it, and roaming millennial Lauren Chen took their place.
You kind of sound like Tucker Carlson.
I don't have a bow tie, dude. I need a bow tie.
You do.
And
it's
then
just,
do you want me to look real weird at the camera?
It's almost like you're well. He stares at the camera just in utter bewilderment, he cannot believe what is coming out of the person's mouth.
Right. Or that Antifa professor had that long of a neck.
What? No one understands that reference.
Yeah, a lot of people understand that reference. Remember the anarcho-communist guy that he did, and he had like a neck that was about foot tall.
I feel like that's the best way to transition to the video from a reference no one got. All right, go.
I'll read you something. Dear Dr. Helen Wilson, I have now closely considered the revisions of your manuscript, Dog Park, and will recommend its publication in Gender, Place, and Culture. You have done very good work to address the issues your viewers raise and have clarified your arguments. Thank you for your contribution to Gender, Place, and Culture, and I hope to be seeing your manuscript in print. Yours truly, PhD, Managing Editor, Gender, Place, and Culture. We have an accepted paper in the #1 feminist geography journal.
Since approximately June of 2017, I, along with two other concerned academics, Peter Boghossian and Helen Pluckrose, have been writing intentionally broken academic papers and submitting them to highly respected journals in fields that study gender, race, sexuality, and similar topics. We did this to expose a political corruption that's taken hold of the university. By this point, several of these papers have been accepted in highly respected journals, and one that claims that dog humping incidents can be taken as evidence of rape culture has been officially honored as excellent scholarship. I'm not going to lie to you. We had a lot of fun with
All right, Brian.
So the dog park is part of a series that these three, should we call them pranksters or whistleblowers?
A little both. I want to know how much you laughed your ass off when you read it.
Oh my God. So let's catch this for those that don't know. A series of articles were written to either spam or get inside of gender studies. The idea is that they're worried that politics has corrupted a group of fields that they call grievance studies. This happens to be things like whiteness studies, feminist gender theory, feminist geography,
critical theory,
things that hang around critical race theory and critical gender theory. And the idea was that they, before you'd mentioned that we had talked about the conceptual penis, and they had the model of a conceptual penis, that the penis wasn't actually a sexual organ, but rather a concept that led through everything from rape culture to global warming.
It definitely caused global warming.
Basically, they wrote a bunch of gobbledygook. They actually cited fictitious papers, and they were able to get it published in a really crappy journal. But most people said there were big problems. No one reads these journals. So what they set out to do in a 2-year plan was to write about 20 different papers and see if they could get them submitted to high quality journals. The idea being, if they would make it through peer review, that maybe these fields do have a deep political bias that is essentially corrupting the science.
So you got 20 papers, 7 make it, something like 6 are on the fence, still waiting, 7 don't make it. So it's not like the scholarship is completely, I mean, some obviously caught onto the joke, But this dog one, that's the one I really want to focus on. It's because it's hilarious.
7, right? So 7 papers. So they 7 are rejected. I think another 7 are in some sort of pending stage, but 7 get through. How many do you need to be like a scholar in the field? If you have 7 published papers, that's a pretty solid CV. In fact, they were getting so well known in these fields that they were actually asked to be reviewers for other papers, other legitimate papers that were being fielded to this. So their papers weren't so much hoaxes as well thought out hoaxes.
Okay, let's describe one. And so I want to start with just Dog Park.
Give an example of any random.
Yeah,
the titles are wonderful.
The title is Human Reactions to Rape Culture and Queer Performativity in Urban Dog Parks in Portland, Oregon.
Right. Here's one of Moon Meetings. The Moon Meetings and the Meaning of Sisterhood, a poetic portrayal of lived feminist spirituality.
That was one of the worst ones, man. You could have picked it better.
How about this one? Feminist Mein Kampf. Our struggle is my struggle. Solidarity feminism and an intersectional reply to neoliberal choice feminism. This was a rewrite of chapter 12 of Mein Kampf, where they pulled out the buzzwords and put in the buzzwords, the intersectional feminist buzzwords. And this made it through peer review.
So there's all these, there's 7 of these insane articles. Obviously, they're meant to be as a joke, but it's also meant to, give a black eye to this scholarly publishing. But to steelman this, well, I shouldn't say that. The counter argument would be, well, hey, these peer reviewers, they're busy people. They got a lot of things going on. They're taking care of their kids. They're walking their dog. They don't have time to sift through, and maybe these just kind of fell through the cracks. Brian, what is to be said about that?
So right, the argument, if you're going to say, all right, they got 7 papers published inside of these journals. So what does that mean? If you were going to say that this doesn't mean anything, you would say, well, hey, there is a ton of journals out there. Peer reviewers are overworked and underpaid. So if you submit a good enough fake, how are they going to tell the difference, right? I mean, if you're a guy taking money at the counter somewhere and somebody's got a really good fake dollar bill, you might think it's real. So I think that was the pushback. Now, the worry is that you can't distinguish these from the actual scholarship. So if you say, okay, well, it's just bad peer review, and these hoax bakers all make it through because this guys can't tell the fake dollar from the real dollar, but doesn't that question all the real dollars that are also in the book? Because if you can't distinguish between the two, maybe the entire thing is suspect.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the answer to the counter argument, is that a lot of these papers that are submitted that are legit, well, at least people consider them legit, are bullshit. They sound like it. What was the example? What was that TED talk with feminism and glaciers, or how glaciers are feminist or something? What was the
feminine glaciology, right? Whether you study glaciers should not matter whether you look at this at a feminine lens or not. This is science. The reason why this comes about is you take somebody like Jane Goodall, a fantastic scientist who rewrites the book on chimpanzee behavior. Now, one of the reasons why she succeeded is because all of her former compatriots were looking at this through their own lens, right? They allowed a little bit of their own patriarchy to maybe bias their own opinions. But the thing is, it wasn't because she brought feminism to science. She was just an objective scientist. She didn't have a bias going into this. She realized, no, none of that stuff is true. I'm going to rewrite the book, and guess what? All of her stuff works. But a guy could have done that too if he would have been able to shift his biases. That she was excellent. Not because she was biased the opposite way, because she wasn't biased.
What, they had male bias? What was it?
Oh, they organized it around human societies. That chimps would argue or would align a lot more with the humans.
The presupposition.
Yes,
was
they took their own structure of humans and played it too much into chimps.
Yeah.
Where she let the data come to her, they were trying to push the data on the chimps.
Okay, so are glaciers feminist or not?
No, they're not feminist. Right? You paint them pink, they're not feminist, right? They're not masculine if you paint them blue either.
So
not color.
So in that case, again, the point of that TED talk was you can't put a socio-political lens on science. It
don't
is
want that.
objective.
Yeah, you
You
don't want
could,
that.
I guess.
Good science is the least amount of bias. So
Because because if Newton happened to be in China, the apple would have still fallen on his head. There's nothing to do with
any science wants to reduce bias. So sometimes what you do is you're worried about bias. So your control group, right? If you're giving somebody a pill, you give the other person a placebo because you don't want to bias this. You don't even want to bias the doctors that are giving the pills out because they may be thinking, oh, well, I know he's on the drug. So your perception is maybe they're getting better. So you don't want even the researchers to be biased. Sometimes you don't want the data analysis people to be biased either. So you blind your tests, right? So this is a way of reducing bias in science. But what you definitely don't want is your own political biases to get in, right? If you're convinced that global warming is not real, are you the best person to be looking into climate change study? Probably not.
If you have strong convictions, then you shouldn't be looking into anything.
Well, you would need to seek to reduce your bias. So maybe you could collect it, but maybe somebody else needs to run the numbers on it. I mean, you want to reduce your own bias as much as possible. But what's happening in what James Lindsay and Peter Boghossian and Helen Pluckrose are calling grievance studies
Way to reel it
is
back.
they're maximizing their bias. That the reviewers are coming through and saying, yeah, I really agree with your assertions, which are extraordinarily biased. And they're saying, but maybe you could take it even farther and claim X, Y, and Z. I mean, it's extraordinary, the amount of bias. And we were going to look specifically at the dog park paper. Do you want to read the title of that out?
Oh, I already read it once. Yes.
And the purpose of this was to see if they could get an absurd conclusion pushed through peer review. They've collected an enormous amount of fake data on this, and there's a number of problems. But
okay, so
what were your impressions of Dog Park when you read it?
So again, it was Dog Park, human reactions to rape culture and queer performativity in urban dog parks in Portland, Oregon. And the whole premise is the fact that, you know, there's all these dogs running around dog parks. They're all humping each other, and that is basically contributing to rape culture. So we all see this, and we just let it slide. We let all these dogs hump each other, and it's just because secretly we just all, you know, we're all about the rape.
The idea is right that it's they say dog parks are petri dishes for rape culture, and the idea is that we're putting our own biases on the dogs. So, for example, let's see some of the data, the data that they collected, which they are making up. I actually asked James Lindsay on this. They didn't create a data set for this. They actually just started making up numbers as they go here, and goes. We noted in the data section that male raping / humping was intervened by 97% of the time versus only 32% of the time for female instance. So what they're saying is that not only do women like interrupt dog humping more than men, but male on male dog humping gets stopped more than male female dog humping. Meaning, oh well, if it's a male dog and a female dog, yeah, they must want to let it go ahead, rape culture-y. But on the flip side, if it's a male versus male dog, oh, that's some homo shit, man. We got to stop it. I mean, I shit you not. So they would say, and every bit of their data set on every single one supports the conclusion. So one of these things, 100% of male dogs initiated the humping. Not one in 1,014 incidents of dog humping right over a whole year. Right now, again, this is fake data. 1,000 were all initiated by male dogs. How do you even get that data? How do you make sure of this?
Observational studies, Brian.
Observational studies.
Sure. I want to read this thesis. It's too good. Dog parks are rape condoning spaces and a place of rampant canine rape culture and systemic oppression against the oppressed dog, through which human attitudes to both problems can be measured. This provides insight into training men out of sexual violence and bigotry to which they are prone. Brian, you can't argue with that. It's so true.
Yes, I know. They talk about the idea of, they say, we cannot leash, like we politically cannot leash men. But he goes, perhaps we can, if we show that rape culture exists in the dog parks, we can leash them in a way through education. They even talk about re-education, forced diversity trainings, and all these other things that they assume will take men out of their absolute propensity to rape. Now, it's odd because they never seem to ask, they don't ask about the sexual orientation of these men. So they just assume white male, right? Now they actually do, they say, well, we don't know if they identify as male, so it could be non-binary, but none of these things are even analyzed. But every bit of data is like 97% one way, 30% the other way. So women totally don't like dog humping. Men totally cool with it. Now, men only bad with dog humping when it's male on male, and the idea is that they're homophobic and that this is somehow coming out on their dogs. It's really weird because, Demon, do you know when somebody, like, can you tell the difference between a male and female dog? I can't most of the time, unless like they're lifting up the leg to pee, and I assume it's
upside down.
Yeah,
if they're upside down,
right? But like, do you know? And then dogs hump. I had a female dog for my first dog. That dog humped a lot.
Jesus.
And it initiated the humping. So that's at least one data point away from this.
So it's been since retracted. We should mention this. So
here's the it is not politically feasible to leash men. But we might yank their leashes when they misbehave. Strike men with leashes or other object, and in an attempt to get them to desist from sexual aggression or predatory behaviors. Like, I mean, this is dripping. There wasn't a single female dog that humped, right? And all of the women want to stop the rape. About 2/3 of the men don't want to stop the dog rape. They actually differentiate between dog humping and dog rape based on the dog's level of consent. You heard it right. The dog's level of consent.
By the way, you want to say hi to Mundane Matt?
Mundane Matt's in the chat?
He's hanging.
Mundane Matt, are you there? No, see, I thought are they going to pull him in?
No, he's
in the chat. I thought they were pulling him in.
He's jar bones,
Matt.
man.
If you have not read Dog Park, you really need to. It's a worthwhile endeavor.
Apparently, no. I mean, thankfully there are some research professors like these guys who are willing to essentially, put their career on the line to help in policing the gender, the social studies fields, because they're not, there's not a lot of intellectual rigor going on.
Right, but who cares? So here's the thing. Who gives a shit, man?
I care.
These are journals that nobody cares about. No one reads this stuff. Why do we care?
I got nothing, man.
Do you want me to answer? I'll tell you why we care. Well, because when you look at this, right, there was a couple conclusions that they had. Whoa. What's going on? We got thrown around.
We got someone who never should have been a baseball player or
right.
any other hand-eye coordination.
So, in a number when as I was reading this study, that the idea on like gender, right? So there's ideas on gender on all of this is biology, all of this is completely social, right? Or some mix of in between. In the 60s. The social constructionist theory that, like, if you just raised boys as girls, and if you raise girls as boys, you would essentially get what you raise. That it's all nurture, none nature. Now, this has been shown to be false many times, but yet they hang on to this in a huge way. So here, to clarify, the understanding of compulsory heterosexuality is the male who imposes sexual behaviors, the expectation thereof, on the female. And this, okay, hang on. And it's seen as a threat to his hierarchy and a perception to the natural order, right? So it's the idea that, so they're basically citing the patriarchy. The patriarchy exists, but they'll cite it and give it as a given. So they don't even need to, like, that's settled science, man, right? We absolutely... we can just predict this, and I think that's how these things get out of control. Once I make an outrageous claim like dog parks do rape culture, now you can add on to it and be like, holy shit, man, you should see dog parks in Canada, they're even worse. and then you can cycle it from there.
What I want to know is, so for the conceptual penis, they used a random word generator,
Mhm.
or it was something like a liberal paper word generator, whatever it was, and they put a bunch of that stuff in there. Did they do the same for any of these? Because that was my favorite part about the conceptual penis. Because it was such a word salad.
When they did this, the first one, the conceptual penis was a bit of a learning mechanism for them, because they weren't able to get in any top journals doing complete bullshit. They actually had to engage with the existing scholarship to get these published. So it's obvious that when they've gone through the reviews, that they're citing different people, and they're saying, well, you didn't cite enough women of color. So they'll make sure that they bring in these theories, and they'll make sure that they really exist with the existing scholarship. Now, all of it's ideological, but yet they continue to build on it. So it's like a stalagmite. Right?
So
it just keeps building.
This one was done in well, obviously Boghossian's from Portland. Did you catch the stuff that Andy No was reporting on about the Portland riots that just happened yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was I don't even remember. What was the basis? Did someone get killed, like shot by cops, and then that's how it all started?
No, Antifa is just directing traffic in Portland.
What? Just randomly?
Just randomly.
So, just on a Tuesday.
So there was a recent, so it's in a reaction, but this happens all the time with Antifa grievance. So there was I don't know too much about it, but there was a shooting by the police of somebody, right? So they're reacting to what is thought to be like a police overuse of violence, but I didn't hear anything about the story. I don't know how much details are known. So, I mean, it could be an absolute regular, standard use of force, or it could be an overdone. But Antifa decides to come in, protest, and then direct traffic. But it's not uncommon for this to happen.
The only reason I bring that up is, I mean, Portland is a hotbed for a lot of things. I think that's where Bernie got interrupted when he was that not Portland?
Seattle.
Maybe it was Seattle. I lumped them in the same boat all the time. But it's interesting. So obviously Boghossian's there, and he's got tenure, so I think he's safe at Portland State. But anyone who's in and around that city, I mean, it seems like they have an incredibly active Antifa chapter there.
They do, and the West Coast Antifas are much more violent than the East Coast ones. So New York Antifa, and it's weird how it works out that way. I think again, they're more radical, right? They're in a bigger bubble.
Yeah, but is it possible that the New York police just crack down more? Like,
no, because
I've heard the argument
don't get as violent.
I've heard the argument that that the Portland Police Department is very liberalized.
Well, the Portland Police Department was called off the duty, so the Portland police didn't even engage the protesters. So you have a number of people in the intersection, and they're clogging up the intersection. In fact, one guy, they tell this old man that he can't turn right, and they all start beating on his car, and there's somebody in front of it, and then he kind of freaks out and he takes off, and like it almost looks like he's gonna run over a guy, but he doesn't, and they all chase him down, and they're ready to, like, somebody's got a gas can, and like you could like create the Molotov cocktail that way, and like the guy gets out and he's like 80. It's almost like he himself might have fought Nazis in World War II, and like they ended up not attacking him, maybe because they saw how old he was, and there's people with cell phones everywhere, but they still screamed at him, beat on his car, and let him take off. And this passes for social justice. And
yeah, but that's not. I mean, these occurrences are so.
This is common. And
the last one that came out was that who was that? The purple-haired dude who roundhouse kicked a chick who came to protest.
Jordan, somebody. Right? This is the other piece. Jordan Hunt, I believe was his name.
They know his name.
Yeah, he got doxxed quickly. So what he did. This is some like. Aspiring, awesome male feminist that is in front of a woman who is a pro-life person who's holding a sign.
Hold on, she came up to him, or what happened?
No, she was holding a sign, talking. I don't know who came up to who, but either way, they're having a conversation. Obviously, they're opposed. And he asks if she's going to change her mind on abortion. She says no, and he
no. And then he says
he kicks her in the face.
Hold on.
It says, "I just meant to get your phone."
Jesus Christ! Why do you ruin the order of operations? first he goes, well, in instances of rape or whatever, and she hesitates. She didn't even get a chance to answer the question. He does this weird thing with his mouth where he like,
he does the Michael Jordan.
no, he like
sticks out his tongue.
He like licks his he sticks his tongue out and then roundhouse kicks the fuck out of her. It was ridiculous.
So this is typical bullshit by
Sean, it would be great if you pulled up the video at that exact moment. The guy roundhouse kick. If you do roundhouse kick feminist, it's like the first thing that'll come up. Fine, be that way. Don't do it.
Okay, so one more thing. So let's talk about the dog parks in Portland again. Like, so here's the conclusion. One of the conclusions.
That was the roughest way to reel us back in.
I know. Well, I mean, come on. Like, we've got to get into a feminist space.
Hold on,
kicking women in the face is not feminist.
Yeah, but you couldn't have like connected kicking a pro-lifer in the face with dog rape.
Well, male violence
like 6
starts
degrees
in the dog park.
6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You could have done it.
Look, what is particularly interesting is that raped female dogs were not oppressed because rape is normative at dog parks. This raises highly problematic issues about the agencies of female dogs. So they're worried about the agency of female dogs, right? The idea that men learn their violence and are able to practice their violence by allowing dogs to hump at dog parks.
That was a creative way to tie us back in.
Yeah, it was. So the other one, it's homophobic and transphobic for straight men to not anally to penetrate themselves with dildos. The fact that straight men don't often anally penetrate is a form of homophobia and transphobia. Right? This is wonderful scholarship. I'm so glad that I know this now. But here's the problem. Okay, who cares about the scholarship?
I think it's interesting to see if this will set a precedent. And
but here's the question: who cares? This is locked in academia. But you know why we do it? It's making its way out of academia into HR departments, right? Into companies, right? This is all over college campus. We're hurting speech codes.
Well, but that's so it's one thing to to have a blanket statement like that. I mean, I can give you a specific example. There's a relatively large healthcare organization in and around our area that had a something from the diversity office floating around about proper speech that had to be used with
speech
with patients, and it was like a list of all these terms that you could use and all these terms that you couldn't use, and it got leaked to the public, and so
it was literally called progressive dialogue, right? I mean, it was
like a 40-page handbook.
Yeah.
Jeez, I am loud,
but it said change, allowing your medical speak or something like that to be progressive. So it's automatically political. Right.
Well,
I mean, would we say should it be conservative? Should it be alt-right? Should it be Antifa? They're literally citing a political but the
insanity is if you have someone, who comes in and they're Korean and you're like, well, let me consult my book to know how to refer to you, sir or ma'am. That's
one of the words that they wanted to use in this was, and this is with patients, was the term gender fuck.
Oh yeah, that was an acceptable term,
right? Yeah, there's a preferred term. It was a preferred term. So they wanted to use gender fuck. I had to look up what gender fuck was, and I guess what gender fuck means is like to goof up the binary. So anything to confuse like male and female, blend them together.
Can you use it in a sentence, sir?
They were going to ask me to count up how many straight men and queer people and trans people they had. But you know what? I just want to gender fuck this whole thing and say we're just humans.
There's no way that's how you use it in a sentence.
Yeah, we're going to gender fuck them. Like, I don't care. No, we're all the same. We're all men. We're all female. We're all men. It doesn't matter. We're going to gender fuck this.
Oh, I can't even take it seriously. Anyway,
seriously, check that out.
Well, so going back to your original point, this kind of cultural Marxism stuff does make it out into the real world, and people that think it doesn't are dead wrong.
This is a bad idea to use the term gender fuck with your conservative Hmong patient population. Trust me.
No one outside of Wisconsin knows what a Hmong is.
All right. Yes, yes, you don't know what Hmong.
I do, but I live here.
There are
this is like the biggest
creative people from Southeast Asia. I thought everyone knew who Hmongs were.
I don't think so.
Hmongs are awesome.
They're partly in China and
Southeast
Laos
Asia,
and
doesn't that cover it?
Vietnam and yeah,
Southeast
I guess
Asia.
it does.
Right.
Anyway, that's
But-
what a Hmong is.
Right. So the term women's hospital and women's health center is also up for revision because
Not everyone's a woman.
it's transphobic.
Well, obviously.
Right.
What,
Now,
you didn't
this,
know that?
This is silly, right? What you're going to do is hurt healthcare by doing this. Now,
You're gonna hurt patients by
Colorado.
doing it.
In Colorado, speaking of healthcare, there was the first ever hospital took the bands off. Right, so you don't have gender on your wristband anymore.
Oh,
Right,
what?
because you would have patient name, age, and so on and so forth, sex, and all that. Like, and this is what you do also often for when anytime you're going to do a procedure on a patient, you always have to read this stuff out. It's very
course.
important that you
Yeah.
get all this and that they know what's going on the left side, right side. You don't want to take out the wrong one, all that, you know. But even simple things, it's always good to verify and check. So, with male and female, like the dosages for women on a lot of drugs are different than men. And you'll do this right now. Obviously, there's exceptions broadly within men and women, but these criteria are there for a reason. Now, to be totally fair, they don't completely redact sex. So the sex, the gender assignment, as some people call it, but your biosex will be recorded in the medical record. It just
Dude,
won't
you're
be
going
on the handbase.
very much into the weeds of
No, but don't. But you see, the reason why we do timeouts at the hospital, and you check and verify everything. I mean, the more safeguards you have, the better. We took one safeguard away, because sensitivity.
So what happens? Great transition from me. When you seed the language, what's the? I mean, outside of people dying, as you just said, what else is the problem when you do that?
Well, you get expressly political. So here, when you talk, even a dog part talks about the hegemony of this straight white male.
We're back in the
Right?
dog.
Well, no, but this isn't just the dog park. They're building on an entire field of studies of
Yes.
which they cite and reference. So if you are straight and white, you're by definition problematic. The changing of words, like for example, our HR department changed, and now diversity means minority. So they said we had 8 new hires last month.
Were they diversity?
We're
hires?
100% diverse, but they were 100% minority. That's not diverse. That's actually homogenous, right? So the changing of the words, and then people get freaked out. Well, do you want diversity or do you want all minority?
So
And if one person is an oppressor, like you're looking at everything in medicine, in the business world, at the library, oppressed, oppressor.
okay,
When guess what? It's just a book.
I'm
It's just
more
a
so.
shot of penicillin.
I wanted to talk about how the seeding the language ends up moving the goalposts.
Yes.
So if if I tell you that well, it doesn't work because you are actually white, but if I call you a white supremacist for, I don't know, pick a reason, because all of the beer that you have in your house is light or white beer.
Mhm.
Anyway, you have no dark beer in your house, which is frankly disappointing. I've been wanting to tell you this for a while now. So if that's the case, I'm like, Brian, you're such a white supremacist. You only support the light beers.
But
I've already
they've
that label has already, it may not stick to you, but it's smeared you. You've got white
no,
supremacy
you would say like
doo-doo
white
on you.
supremacy, right? You would say, Brian, you love white t-shirts. You're a white supremacist. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not, dude. I'm not Nazi. And you're going, no. I just literally mean, when I say white supremacist, I just mean you like to wear white t-shirts. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, in that case, I guess I qualify. And now what you do is you hold me to the original definition. So
I don't hold you to
No,
it, but other
this,
people
This
will.
is exactly what happens, though. Like, they're using white supremacy in all of the grievance studies as a basically synonym for American culture, and they'll just call it white supremacy. And then you're like, well, okay, well, I guess I live in. If it's just really another name for culture, then I live in a white supremacy. Yeah, see, you're on our side. We need to tear it down too, right? And it seemed it goes. Any act of, and I'll pull this up, any act that runs against the norm is oppression. I'm going to look up what they actually had a functioning definition of oppression.
As you do, my whole point with that is that once you use, first of all, once you use a smear like that, the definition of that smear, because it means something, or it's supposed to, and that means truly people who are, greatly bigoted. And you, first of all, now it's lost all meaning. And the second thing is you can never get that off of you. I mean, someone is going to identify you after that just for, again, doing something completely benign, as a white supremacist. And that's problematic. And that's kind of what's happening with our culture today. It's somewhat of a challenge. Oh my God.
Yeah. It's somewhat of a challenge, but specifically, here's the definition of oppression.
Peanut gallery.
Here's the definition of oppression according to Taylor, another person that they a legitimate study that they cite within gender oppression. What it means to occupy a public space in a non-normative way. You're different.
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. If you're different in a public space, you're oppressed. This is bullshit, right? Well, then fine. Then if I dye my hair green, I guess I can claim oppression, and maybe they would even say that's true. But like basically,
true. You become a minority.
The idea is they sort of wish to crush all norms of society, and I'm thinking you simply can't. You can change norms, but you can't crush them.
Yeah. Speaking of crushing norms, so Mythcon happened.
It did
in October.
Yes, and we definitely
September.
And why is it crushing the norm?
Well, because nothing like it exists.
You know what? The reason why it's crushing the norm is because we're supposed to just shut up due to our sex and gender, dude, and race.
That's true.
We
should not.
We should shut up. We should be shutting up and let more oppressed people talk. No, we should not. We should be.
We had a lot of oppressed people talking.
We should let everyone talk
proportionally.
You know what was cool? Even the diversity crowd, that does worry about race and gender, but diversity. We do believe that viewpoint diversity trumps all these other kinds of diversities. But did you see the men and women split at Mythcon?
I saw way more women than last year. That's for sure.
And in the atheist conferences would always say, we need to get more women. We don't have enough women. They kicked us out of the club. And yet we're getting what? Almost 50% women, at least 40%.
Exactly,
I didn't lose the final numbers because
they're
I can't always tell whether Chris is a guy or girl.
They're interesting topics. And Froman, if I'm pronouncing that right, thank you for coming. I hope it was fun. It was really fun for us.
Yeah, it was. And other matter.
But then, so we're always looking for opportunities how to improve, how to make things better. And I think we definitely noticed some from last year, right? We implemented some things. Not all of them were perfect. I'll be the first one to say that. And then this time we had some stuff like we could have done without a bomb threat. We could have done some different things in terms of moderation. But otherwise
we could have done without the bomb threat. Did you call that bomb threat in?
Froman, you son of a bitch. No, I thought generally it was significantly better than last year. And again, all of these
last year was a lot of fun too. I think we just had more people.
Of course it was. It was really fun. But we're doing that survey, right? Don't we do it?
Well, maybe because we had to go through e-tics. We're sorry about that. And they charged extra fees, some of which we actually ate for you guys, which was nice. But yeah, it's gonna be a little bit harder.
We ate like 15 grand on this. Oh, speaking of anyone listening, we have a GoFundMe out there, and please
the idea is we want to
please help in taking a chunk out of that 15 grand because this is not
Mythcon costs a lot.
This does not bode well for Mythcon 2019.
Right. So Dima is playing a ridiculous pessimist right now. So what Dima wishes to say, because obviously he missed the last planning meeting and doesn't know. So we want to take Mythcon on the road, right? The idea is
we do.
Not everyone likes to come to Milwaukee, even though we think it's effing awesome, right? We want to be able to take this on the road for people that
city in America for those
we
that
want to know
here.
where you guys want to go. So email us, tweet at us, tell us where to come. we're trying to get a GoFundMe to help this effort out. So capital in the bank. Again, we're a nonprofit, so none of this can go to us. We're not allowed to pocket this. But what it can do is get Mythcon on the road. It can get the guests that we want. Ideally, we want to be able to pay our speakers.
Well, first we have to dig us out of the hole.
Right. And what we want to be able to reduce prices, right? I mean, like 75 for ticket, 125, that's a lot. But the more we can get in the bank, the more we can roll that on. So if you want to see Mythcon go down, that's great. You know, we're back no matter what, but we need,
well, the question is
the boost from the GoFundMe's help a ton in the early planning stages. They really do.
Well, the reason why this one was able to be so big, Mythcon 5, is because of the initial GoFundMe after the last one, which was really successful. It put us in the black, and that we were able to bring in a bunch of guests. So
and get started on it right away.
But that was this year was big. I mean, we had a lot of people there. So the
cost.
Well, the thought is as we take it on the road,
$60,000. It costs a lot to throw these things.
Yeah. So as we take this on the road, it'll be a slightly different format, but in terms of like how many speakers we have. But it's still going to be this dialogue where people are chatting with each other, differing opinions. All of that is truly important because you never know. Every panel that we had, some of them we really didn't anticipate how much agreement there was going to be. That was interesting and weird. But all of them are going to be people that have differing viewpoints, and they're gonna kind of come at it from an intellectual perspective. One is hoping.
Yeah. So on that GoFundMe, if you Google Mythcon and GoFundMe, you might see the old one. If you don't, the way to do it, go to our Twitter feed. It's the top tweet. Or go to Facebook. Either way. Yeah. Somebody asked me, can I get the link? And I'm like, shit, I don't know how to get it other than going to Twitter.
No, it's pinned everywhere. Fuck, it's pinned on Twitter, Facebook. This video, I assume it's pinned. But I had a lot of fun. Obviously, I always have. I'm a ray of goddamn sunshine, so I have fun all the time. But the pre-party or the VIP party was a blast.
That's a blast.
The whole day, dude, everyone.
The one critique. I mean, the nice thing about it is you got to see so many panels. We got to hit a ton of topics and have a lot of people. But it's a long motherfucking day.
There were no breaks.
It is that we got there at 7:30, 8, something like that. I think, when did I go to bed? 5 in the morning.
It's because
that is a long
Brian,
day.
You were not medicating yourself enough.
Okay, fine. But either way, it's a long day. So what we're thinking about doing is more like half-day events to 2 or 3 panels, have a party, and roll that way. That way it isn't one of the days is that will keep the cost down and be able to like have these self-fund.
Well, and the party aspect is fantastic because people are, they're socializing with each other in a very open forum. So some of the conversations that I heard at 1 a.m. were arguably just as good as 1 p.m.
Right. And right. Talking to a drunk Christianity was a blast.
Oh my God.
And the thing is, when you're talking about these topics,
because someone's going to flip that into, we got her drunk.
She admits to being drunk. It was a blast. She can handle herself. She's a self-described alpha female. You do not want to alpha.
She is a big girl. That's true.
The one that the anti.
And I don't mean that derogatively, by the way, you assholes that are going to take that out of context.
So, but the point is, when you're talking about these kind of things, people can have strong opinions on feminism, anti-feminism, social justice, anti-social justice, even religion, atheists, right? Remember, like we're the only conference to come out of atheism that always gets religious people to come to us, which is actually fun because the God debate is okay. You can, but even anything you can talk about Mythcon.
But even religious, there were, dude, we had a lot.
We had a few MAGA hat guys that absolutely were like.
There were 3 or 4, but no, we had a lot of religious people this time around, and they
tend to be monitored. There's no fundies, right?
Well, first of all, we don't know.
Fundies?
We didn't do a poll, but the whole point is the first panel was solely on atheism, and I think they had a blast. I mean, I didn't hear any criticism about that. So that was, and that, by the way, was a great conversation.
Yeah.
The division in atheism needs its own,
That needed its own panel.
and it deserves more conversation with differing voice. I love the 4 people that we had on stage. No, 5, including
With
the
the
moderator. That was incredible. But the more people who are in this, who are in the atheist world, who can talk about how not only the alternative creator community has influenced it, but in general the ideological side of the far left, the idiot
Split atheism.
yeah.
Right.
Idiomatic.
There's that's certainly my opinion. There are probably other opinions on that, but like to me, yeah, atheism like simply couldn't hold its political strain. It was too big, and it was diverse. It was certainly diverse in thought, and there were anti-theists, there were spiritual but not religious in there, middle of the road science
But it's also
types.
It's not necessarily a movement. That's the thing.
Right.
That was.
But then once you pin the like, no, we are going to be progressive causes. You're going to alienate your conservatives, your libertarians, and a whole bunch.
But that's where it's problematic. I don't know if you heard. Sam Harris gave an in. Oh, it was on. I think it was on Ruben's show, and he said he was talking about Jordan Peterson. He was talking about how Peterson was attracting these people who were seeking something more that atheism wasn't giving them. And I think it was a great point to make, is that it was never meant to be any kind of life altering ideology. It was the lack of something. That's it. It's not a unifying factor. So the people who made it into some sort of a, they tried to weave in humanist elements and made it into an ideology, as batshit crazy. That's why a lot of us, were against it.
Yeah. Well, I think Jordan Peterson's come back, and he's really interesting because in a way you're seeing sort of a resurgence of religion, but not really, sort of,
but not in a fundamentalist,
and not in a fundamentalist way. So what he's gone is like there was contention that Jordan Peterson is taking some of Sam Harris's audience, and that's
absolutely true.
That I think that is true, and what his contention is that fine, atheism fits science, but it'll make you into a nihilist, and when you don't give a shit about anything, your life gets bad, and this is just not going to work for most people. So instead, he revives the religious narratives, except for he tells them in narrative form, like Icarus, like don't with the wax wings, who flies too close to the sun. They melt, he falls into the ocean. It basically means lesson learned, don't be a cocky mofo, right? But he's doing the same thing with religious, turning these stories into metaphors that don't necessarily have to be real events, but you can learn a moral from them. What do you think?
Well, but I guarantee that Jordan Peterson had people, not Jordan, so Sam Harris had people who were listening to him who were on the fence. They weren't 100% out of religion. They were like, they were just listening to a smart dude. And when Jordan came around, now they get to have their cake and eat it too. They can kind of still be. They don't even have to be fence sitting. They can just say, yeah, I love this because of the power of the narrative, and so they can I'll call myself.
But for what reason?
I'll call myself Jewish, but from a cultural standpoint, I love the culture. I love eating the food.
Does it give you purpose?
No, not really.
But see, then that's what.
But it gives me. But here's the deal. But it gives me a community, and that's the interesting thing.
But is that enough?
Absolutely.
But where do you get purpose though? So angry. Somebody says, my understanding that Peterson is talking about how people, specifically men, don't have a purpose. And that's what you do see all the time people saying, I'm doing something. Dude, now. You gave me purpose.
But this question of a purpose is kind of like no one has a purpose. If you can be fighting for a cause, and maybe that's your purpose, and you've chained yourself to that. But most people are not fighting for a particular cause. They're just going through their life. They're trying to.
Ask most mothers or fathers if they have a purpose. They'll tell you,
okay,
yes.
Fine. Someone's trying to raise a kid. Someone's trying to buy a new TV. Someone's trying to, reach the next level of their career or sports, whatever. So those are, to an extent, purposes, but you don't necessarily need that. What I was getting with it is the sense of community is important, and if you can decouple God from it, the nice thing about Judaism is that so many Jews are atheists but still culturally identify, that you can kind of have your cake and be in it, because those people still donate to causes, donate to charity, for example, and so they're still interacting with the community, but they're not as much interacting with the Orthodox or anyone who's fundies, but they still get that person to person interaction. That
What if you're a hardcore introvert
and you happen to be an atheist?
Yeah, well, the person to person interaction might be like, really, do I have to go to that fucking party again?
But my whole point is, if you don't want to, then sit at home.
But how do you get purpose?
Jesus
he
Christ.
was crying, you must find purpose through work. I mean, that's Peterson's argument. Carry as big of a load as you possibly can and find purpose in what you do.
He wants
responsibility.
Yeah, he wants to laden responsibility on people. And I fundamentally agree with this, is that if you do, you're going to be so busy doing shit, you're not going to worry about piddly things in life because you got to do this. You got to go to work.
Dimitri, it sounds like you want to argue with Jordan Peterson at Mythcon. I think he does.
First
what do
of
you
all,
think, Sean? Are we like, should we put that up? You want to see that?
Love to argue with Jordan Peterson. He is significantly smarter than I am, so I probably wouldn't fare very well. But I'll argue the fuck out of him. And I'm not saying that he's wrong in this regard. I'm simply bringing up the fact that if you can take religious elements and religious communities, cherry pick whatever the fuck you want from them, like the stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to believe in Jonah and the whale, not believe in that it actually happened, but be like, that's
I cherry pick from Star Trek.
Be like, Brian, but that's
come on.
So
who gives a shit? Like
dumb.
You cherry pick from everything.
My point is, you could create a community out of Star Trek of weirdos like yourself,
mm-hmm.
or you can be in maybe a more normalized community of, let's say, fellow Christians
Star Trek
or whatever.
Doesn't give you purpose though necessarily, unless
damn it, you don't need purpose. You need the community.
All right, well then, yeah, you were definitely Jordan. I think Jordan Peterson would argue this with you. So
he's not that religious though. He's using these stories as some
correct.
Sort of a moral.
He will dodge the God question.
He does. Scaffolding. That's what it is.
We had some ideas for the for Mythcon, but we have to hold them back for now. Sean was motioning at me, but either way, we really appreciated meeting everyone at Mythcon. It was just
by the way, that's so Jews
the party has to stay because that party was a lot of fun. Watching Music Man Mike
someone said the Jews are religious leftists, which is. Have you ever heard of Ben Shapiro? Okay. There are a lot of people like him. So the leftist aspect of the Jewish population in the U.S. has a lot to do with the fact that because Jews have historically been oppressed, the more that you push for equal treatment under the law, leniency, egalitarianism, etc., the better that's going to help the Jewish community, so you can prevent more pogroms.
Yeah, sort of, but there's a regressive left within Judaism too. I mean, there's the ones that align with Linda Sarsour.
There's a regressive left in every community, but there's a
I don't know if there's any in the Jehovah's Witness community, but go on.
There's somewhat of a stereotype that Jews are overwhelmingly leftists. There are a lot of Democrats that are
mm-hmm.
Jewish, but that also tide is somewhat shifting.
But there's a big difference between a liberal and a far leftist. Huge difference.
I agree.
Yeah.
And because of the horseshoe theory, you've got like your essentially neo-Nazis are on the same page as your far leftists who are flying the Palestinian flag, going, Jews are the oppressors,
correct.
Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
They're in the same camp.
Another reason why, and just like tie that in a boat, another reason why this matters, right? One of the student activist groups on college is like the students, SJT, Students for Justice of Palestine, right? This is about as anti-Semitic as it gets.
Wait, who are you talking about?
The Students for Justice Palestine. It's a student group organization, far left student group on a lot of campuses.
Different than CARE?
Yeah, CARE is different. But they adopt the They adopt that same regressive left attitude, and all of this oppression stuff essentially you can find it in this critical theory, in this grievance theory. You're finding all of the stuff that you need to really, really polarize. And none of this stuff is good. And it creates reactionary factions on the right. It's the left. So you have an insurgency on the left. We have an insurgency on the right. And I think we have to resist polarization. Like, come together, come to Mythcon in the middle, like talk about it, yell about it if you need to, but have a beer afterwards. That's my theory.
The chat has turned into discussion about Jews. Anyway, point being, we don't have this type of fundamentalist ideologies happening in our Mythcon discussions, and that's the amazing thing about them is you got people, different sides, they come together, dick around, talk, and then everyone has a beer, and that's beautiful.
And in my experience, I'm meeting right of center Jews for some reason.
You're what?
I'm meeting right of center Jews. I've never met one of the regressive leftist Jews. I don't know why. Maybe I hang in different places.
I mean, because I'm in the community, I know a couple, but yeah, their Facebook posts are wild. But it's just like two. But I know an equal amount of conservatives, so it's really dumb to be like, yeah.
Let's not judge by label. I know it's amazing too, right? But this is why we're anti-identity politics. The label doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
she's a woman. Does that mean she's weak? No, she might be strong. You cannot tell. You don't know. Is she a mother? Maybe. Or is she a career woman? Maybe. Like, you can't tell. Let's not judge.
Be on the lookout. That was really loud. For Mythcon news. It's coming out soonish. Please go to the GoFundMe campaign and hook it up, because that'll incredibly help us. And we're
gonna post the dog park. It is worth a read on the Twitter feed. The actual whole article is absolutely hilarious.
We're gonna post a lot of things. We're gonna post the roundhouse kick.
Ton of comedy in there. You know, like they're you know, even when they were talking about how the dog fights were broken up, and they're like,
Brian some
threw horns, some threw this, and that goes in. It goes in. One gentleman started to do jumping jacks right next to the dog, presumably because it would distract him. And I'm like, there's these obvious absurdities just thrown in there here and there that I'm like, you've got to do it. And the math doesn't add up on their data. I figured that out. Like, you know, even if like all of this would be normal, like the math literally doesn't add up. So reviewer just like can't handle the fractions. So they missed that too.
This was Brian's favorite article of all time.
It really was.
Clearly.
It was an excellent hoax. I was mesmerized. I did a deep dive in it. Check it out. Do that deep dive and come out as nerd-tastic.
Don't be surprised if this comes out in like
Holy
3
shit.
or 4 more videos where Brian brings this up.
Well,
thank you. Longest sign off ever. Peace.
See you guys.